Welcome to It Starts With You, where we cut through the noise and get real about the behaviours that shape our lives, both personally and professionally. I'm Vicky O'Farrell. Let's jump in because behaviours start with you. Welcome to another episode of It Starts With You with me, Vicky O'Farrell, and with my wonderful guest today, Jackie Handy. And as I do with all my guests, Jackie, would you like to introduce yourself to the viewers and listeners, who you are, and what amazing stuff do you do in the world today?
Thanks, Vic. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. My name is Jackie Handy, as in useful. I use that a lot. I've used that my whole life. And I work predominantly with leadership teams, helping them create better workplace cultures. So I'm a big fan of improving workforce engagement and fundamentally giving leaders the tools to navigate the challenges and complexities in leading teams in today's workforce.
Excellent. Now, I saw you speak at a conference recently. Fabulous. And you shared a new framework that you've got, which I really loved because it simplified why we matter. And I think you actually call it the matter model, don't you? Now, do you know what, actually, listeners and viewers, rather than me trying to explain Jackie's matter model, why don't I actually ask Jackie, would you like to explain what this matter model is? Because it really stuck with me. I say stuck with me. Obviously, I'm not explaining it very well, but it was impactful in thinking, do I matter?
Yeah, thank you. The matter model, really what I've done is I've been working in leadership development now for 20, 30 years. And I reckon with other teams, I've been working with them for almost 20 years. But I've also been a leader myself. And I think very often what happens is we struggle thinking about where to focus our attention. There's so many things that are, I guess, conflicting priorities, aren't there, in today's workplaces? So would it be great if we could somehow find a way to laser focus our attention on the things that are really important? And what I've established is that there are two universal questions that everybody wants to answer a yes to. And the first of those is, do I matter here? And do I matter here links to, do I feel valued for who I am, uniquely for who I am, which brings about which encompasses my identity and my heritage and so forth. Do I belong? So that links into that feeling of belonging. And do I feel personally significant, that my absence would be missed? So universally, everybody wants to be able to answer yes to that question. And then the second question is, does what I do here matter? And that links into purpose, feeling like I'm making a difference in what I'm doing, and that I have the opportunity to learn and grow and develop every day to be a better person tomorrow than I am today, right? So universally, we want to be able to answer yes to those questions. And I've mapped those into quite a simple, as you mentioned there, 4-box grid, which highlights, it actually helps organizations diagnose where their people and teams may be sitting in that moment in time. Now, you know from the work that you do, people don't belong in boxes. So these are transient zones. But what happens if people don't feel like they belong and they don't feel like they have a bigger purpose? Well, I could go into that, but there are clearly consequences for people feeling that way. And similarly, if people only feel they have a strong purpose and they can make a difference, but they don't feel they've found their place of belonging and value, there are also consequences there. If people feel like they belong, but they haven't found that wider purpose yet or how they make a difference, there are consequences there. And of course, what we want is that intersection. So what makes this unique is the fact that we often talk about purpose and belonging individually as separate entities, but actually the really important thing from my work is seeing the intersection between those two, and that's what brings us into flow, and a state where we feel empowered, we feel like we belong, we feel like we can be doing the stuff that we can immerse ourselves in and just love doing every day. And that in and of itself, it's a diagnostic tool, but it also then links into wider work of, okay, so what do we do to move the dial and re-engage the people that we have in our team?
Mm. And it's powerful stuff, but it is simple. There's a couple of things there. First of all, I love that it's got four zones because you know me and a disc and four zones and going back
Right.
way in history, Empedocles and Hippocrates for fluids and four elements. That the number four is very powerful. But the word flow, when we're in flow, I mean, you're in flow, I'm in flow. We do what we do because we love it. And when you do what you love, you don't feel like you're working really. But the speed at which the not the world turns, because that still turns exactly 24 hours in a day, but everything is at such a fast pace now.
Right.
We can end up going from I belong here and I matter into I don't feel I belong and what I'm doing doesn't matter really quite quickly without knowing it. How can leaders, it could be a leader that goes from that one zone to that other. But how can leaders spot if they've got people in their team that look like they were in this one zone, belonging and mattering, to being in completely the opposite? How can they pick up on that?
I mean, that is emotional intelligence, quite frankly. And the the world of work, we discuss emotional intelligence quite a lot, right? So, do I understand how I'm feeling at any moment in time, and how do I self-regulate and manage myself and my own emotions? And then, do I have I got the capacity to read a room or read an individual in terms of what I already know about them? And then how do I manage that relationship in that moment? And that's where, as we both agree, people don't belong in boxes. So, we do move. And as you rightly acknowledge there, we can move quite quickly depending on outside circumstances or conditions within the organization. Um, and so it has to boil down to how well the leader or the colleague knows their other colleagues, right? Simple as that. But these things, these principles that I talk about are, they are simple, and it's the small things that, because they seem so simple on the surface, get overlooked again and again and again. Is someone quieter than they ordinarily would be? Is somebody taking time out? Is somebody making mistakes? Is somebody withdrawing from conversation in meetings? Is somebody getting into conflict more than they ordinarily would? So these are just typical human behaviors, but noticing where actually this person's behavior seems to be moving from what I know them to be and how they behave, to into something very different. I think as human beings, if we have honed and we continue to hone our emotional intelligence, we pick up on those things. And it's then about reacting and responding to those things that we notice as soon as is possible, really, to do so, to then, and sorry, just to add, but also to ensuring that psychological safety is present. Because if that psychological safety is absent, and you say to someone, is everything okay? Or, you want to talk about it, you seem a bit out of character, then the person is not going to give you an honest response. They're just going to continue to tell you what they think you want to hear. So it's a combination of things, but essentially comes down to how well do we know our people, and how emotionally intelligent are we that we respond and react in the moment.
Mm. Because if an organization is going through change, a leader will know this change will have an impact on my people and it will impact everybody differently because we're all wired differently.
Right.
What we don't know is that actually is there stuff going on outside of the workplace that's impacting that person. That's the emotional intelligence part that you've just talked about. But what happens if there's something going on for the leader, yeah, or the colleague that they're not aware of? Because things, I, I mean, I know when I'm under pressure, my profile, and those viewers and listeners that have watched this or been avid followers since the start know I go very red, and I call it I turn into Miranda Priestley, which is not particularly pleasant for anybody around me. But I'm aware of it because I think of what I do. There are people, and I see it happen an awful lot. The people do change and they're not self-aware. How could,
Mm.
and sometimes you can't say to that person, can you? I mean, my husband can say to me, "Oh, you've gone all Miranda on me," which is just a thing we have, rather than
Right.
putting the hands up and going, "It's your hormones, love," because he learnt not to do that in menopause. How can we approach someone that we maybe know well enough, but don't know them like a you and me would know each other, to say, is everything okay? Because some people feel scared to say, is everything okay? Because they
Yeah.
feel like then I might just lose them. So how would you recommend or
Okay.
approach that?
So there's quite a bit to unpack there.
Yeah.
And the first thing you said was, you know, a leader might know there's change going on in the organization, so that feels like a given. I would argue that it doesn't always feel like a given, first of all. And as a leader, you are often privy to the details behind any change before your team members are. And often what happens is there are assumptions made between the communication that's given to the leader and the communication that's given from the leader to their team. So there are assumptions made that, oh, because I've got my head around it as a leader, this will be fine for the team, but without considering the team members and everything that makes them them. So I think that's the first thing to say, is that let's not assume that change and change communications are handled well in organizations. They're very often not. But
We wouldn't, let's face it, Jackie, I'm interrupting you there. We wouldn't have a job if they were they?
yeah, right. But I think to answer your question, then, how do we approach people if we think that they're acting out of character, without necessarily saying, I shared this from stage, we're taught to say, aren't we, how are you? How are you really? And we think that that's going to get people to open up. I go back, as I did a moment ago, to say, if it's that trust and psychological safety which is the foundation to successful teams and successful relationships within those teams.
Let's hit pause for a second so I can tell you how I work with leaders and teams to turn behaviour into results. If your team's stuck in the same old patterns, it's not just a skill gap, it's a behaviours gap. My multitude of workshops break those patterns and build stronger, more productive teams. It starts with you, and together we'll make it happen.
So if you have not taken the time to understand who the people in your team are, and that will be, from perhaps their personality styles, the work that you do, but also, linked with that would be, what are their hopes, what are their dreams, what are their needs, what are their vulnerabilities, what is their identity, what is their heritage and background and culture and beliefs, and all those things that make us us. You can't quite see it on my back wall, but I have a multicolored map of the world. And that links to this whole, we all have a map of the world that makes us us. It's unique to us. And if we haven't taken the time to understand the full makeup of an individual, then how on earth can we really know whether they're acting in or out of character at any given moment in time? If we do take that time, then the questioning becomes easier. It becomes easier to get curious, and you're much more likely to get a positive response. If there's somebody listening to this thinking, well, okay, I feel like we're somewhere in the middle in my team, right, or with people around me, then try the how are you question, but and give people the time to respond and consider, but also think about asking them slightly different questions. What is it you need that will help you do your best work today? Or how are things going for you beyond the workplace? What could be put in place that would help you do your best work, right? So it's just slightly different questions, and I could think of more with more time, but these kind of open questions as well, as opposed to, is everything okay? Because most people will just give you a complicit or compliant, yeah, everything's fine, right? And we think we've done our bit, but actually it's not that we aren't listening, it's that we're asking the wrong questions in the first place.
And is that because I've just been scribbling, if you're watching this, it's just become a habit very much. I don't know whether it's like British culture habit. So for those of you listening around the world, please do let me know of when you meet someone. Yeah, oh Jackie, hi, how are you? And you go, yeah, I'm good, thanks. You? Yeah, great. And it's just that greeting habit that
Yeah.
follows hi.
Like a
So
meeting, it's like an etiquette, isn't it? That we
yeah,
think again, it's a slight fear of we don't want to be vulnerable, perhaps, but also we don't want to be the mood hoover, right? The one that sucks the good mood. So, if you said, "Hi, Jackie, how's it going?" And I said, "You know what? I'm having a really terrible day, and my dog died, and everything's terrible in my world, and all my business has fallen apart." And now, I mean, we know each other, so you would probably be okay with that with me, right? But again, we know each other enough. But if you don't, and if you don't have that relationship, you're probably going to think, blimey, sorry I asked, right? Because you're asking the question on autopilot, but you don't necessarily really want to hear the real response. So you're just going through the motions of greeting etiquette rather than asking with intention.
and you know it. I shouldn't chuckle, but it was reminding me of somebody that I did work with, and they sat on the meet and greet desk. And every day I'd go in, and I was not in this office all the time. And I'd go in, morning, hi, how are you? And like you say, just that natural how are you comes out. And then you stop because they'd actually then tell you. And for some reason, their life always seemed to have lots of, it was like mood hoovery. So I used to think, right, I've got to just, um, morning, meeting at 9, just to be able to get through. But like you say, it's actually knowing that you've got that psychological safe. Because if I said to you, "Hi Jackie, how are you?" and you said, "Actually, Vic, I'm having a really shit time," I'd
Yeah,
be like, "Oh, okay. Do you want to talk about it?" Because
yeah,
we have that relationship.
yeah.
It's knowing that somebody, if somebody does actually turn around and say to you, "I'm not good," are you actually equipped to suddenly switch from "Hi, how are you?" or "Oh, hi, how are you?" No, "Oh," to be
That's
able,
right.
but without that shock on your face of like, "Oh God, I wasn't expecting that." It's more a case of like, do you need to talk about it?
Yeah.
And if you
And
haven't got the time, you've got to make the space for them.
right. Interestingly, as well, so I do probably like you, but I do a lot of work with global teams. And so within your questioning, your language, and the way in which you behave, it takes on a slightly different angle when you're looking at culture and you're factoring culture into the mix. And I remember doing some work a couple of years ago with a group of people in Poland. And so I did the whole "how are you?" because that's what we're taught to do. And I did have somebody that sort of said to me, and she obviously was more self-aware at that point than I was, and she said, in Poland, when we are asked that question, we feel that we need to answer that very honestly and openly and give you the detail behind the literal "how are you?" So and so that's an example of where somebody's not intending to be a mood hoover, but you've asked them a question, and so they will comply by giving you a detailed response. So there are cultural nuances to factor in as well. And you're right. You said earlier, us Brits, and you're right. And probably in other cultures as well, you get an element of the "yeah, I'm fine," when actually you're not fine. Right? And we even have a standard joke about that, don't we? If any, never in the history of telling someone you're fine, are you fine? They have a standing joke about it because we use it all the time, right? So it's just people are brilliant and a little bit crackers as well, and that's what makes us all beautifully unique.
Yeah.
But we do all want to feel like we matter, and that what we do matters too.
And, and that's the thing. It's like yeah, I think I've seen someone actually in tears before on a train, and gone up and gone, "Are you? Do you?" And sometimes you think, I don't actually know what to say, and then they go, "It's okay, I'm fine." I'm like, okay, a Brit's crying, doesn't want to share. And that, do you know what, that, and this is the thing, it's also then knowing when to just leave somebody.
Yeah,
It's acknowledging, like you say, that it's the four matters thing. Do I matter? I've just shown someone respectfully that I've seen that they're not okay, they don't want to do anything about it now, but they know they matter. they will come to me when they're ready.
Right. And if we keep those two questions at the heart of not just leadership, but I think at the heart of humanity, and recognize that everybody wants to feel valued, that they belong, that they matter here, and that what they do here matters. And so, whatever context you're in, if your intention is to show them one and both of those things in the environment that they're in, you're much more likely to structure your communication and your questions around ensuring that that can be possible or enabling that to exist for that person, right? So it is very much about having that positive intention. So what's the intention of the communication? And I think perhaps that's sometimes where we fall flat, is we communicate without intention. We, going back to my point, about autopilot, that's what we do. And we do it in leadership, we do it in teams, we do it in organizations, because we are going through the corporate motions and we overlook these small things over and over again. But I have within the matter model the concept of $1 million moments. And these $1 million moments are small, no cost moments for us, but they have the capacity to create huge value for the people around us. So, a smile, not a creepy one, but an appropriate, a smile at somebody when you walk into a room, a genuine thank you, an acknowledgement of effort or work that somebody's done, remembering a key date from somebody's diary that they've happened to mention before, all those small things. There are so many of these, but they really cost us nothing, but they do require us to be intentional about creating them. But the dividends they pay are huge.
Oh, absolutely. And I love the fact that you call yours the $1 million moments. I refer to them as the micro moments,
Yeah,
which change an emotional reaction into an intentional reaction. Because it is that, isn't it?
yeah,
Did I intend to ask how you were? Well, actually, or was it just a reaction? But you can tell that because it's not just the words, it's the tonality, it's the facial expressions, it's all of that. And
that's
if we
right.
just, because this is bigger than just leadership and the workplace, is it not? It's just the world we live in is so fast paced and so sometimes feels out of our control.
Mm.
That if
And
you
it's becoming more and more complex, isn't it?
Yeah.
And of course, everybody's talking about AI and the advancements of technology and so on. And there's some real good in that, but there is, of course, that danger of losing a sense of humanity within that. Um, but ultimately, at least for the moment, we can all agree that AI can't replicate empathy. It can't replicate emotion on the scale that we can as humans. And I think, therefore, using AI where it can help us with, I don't know, structuring and whatever, but actually the stuff that we do best, leaning into that more, and it is that empathy, that emotional intelligence, that creativity as well, which can be supported by AI but should be led by us. All of those things, um, of course, I've seen these things where people are feeding into chat gpt or similar other AI tools that they're feeling terrible and AI starts to comfort them. But even the AI, to get a modicum of empathy, needs to be given the information about you to be able to accurately respond to you. And once again, a fabricated relationship perhaps, but it just shows the depth of that understanding between one person to another is massive in shaping what happens next.
Mm. Oh, hugely. And I mean, I've used AI as a little bit of therapy, but just in terms of, I'll get maybe like a WhatsApp message. And again, it's that micro moment before we actually emotionally react. I've thrown it into ChatGPT and said, this was my response. And ChatGPT told me off at one point. There are other platforms, obviously, and said, you've responded to that emotionally. Let's look at it intentionally. It's like, oh, hello. But we want to strip the emotion out of it, but that's the human part. that emotional intelligence, I mean, that artificial intelligence can't replace the emotional intelligence. And that is our different, that's what makes us human.
Right, absolutely. And that's what I'm all about, frankly, because I refer to leaders and teams a lot because that's the work that I do. But yes, this work can and arguably should definitely be brought into mainstream life, for anybody that's thinking, I want to have a better relationship with my teenagers, or a better relationship with my neighbors or people in my social circle. They will all still be thinking, do I matter here, and does what I do here matter? And that does what I do here doesn't have to be about a job. It could be just about the sports that they're doing, the social stuff they're doing, how they show up. Are they following something that is, I guess, bigger than themselves? And I previously, before moving into learning and development and speaking at work, I spent 15 years as a recruiter, and you get a sense really of why people stay in jobs, why they go to jobs, and why they leave jobs. And one of the biggest reasons that people leave jobs still, this was the same back in the late 90s and early noughties, and it's still the same today in 2026, is it's a lack of value, feeling valued. The reasons are still the same. It's never about just about money and the things that we think people are attracted to, benefits packages and pay and so on. Of course, that plays a role if that's not sufficient enough, but it is actually feeling valued, feeling that they belong. We're also in an environment where we have as many as 5 different generations of people working in organizations right now. And although they will have slightly different approaches to work and slightly different drivers in their workplace, they all still want to feel that they are valued, that they are making a difference, and they have the opportunity to learn and grow, and that they belong, right? Simple.
Simple. Comes down to other people. Wonderful. Jackie, that is, I think, a really great place to close this conversation, which has been enlightening as always. If you could leave our listeners and our viewers with one fundamental question to ask themselves, or a poignant quote, what would that be, Jackie?
So I'll give one of each, shall I? So I'll say something you could ask yourself is, what is my intention in this moment? A little takeaway would be, what is $1 million moment that you can create for somebody in your world today? Something that costs you nothing, but could create tremendous value for them. And the final thing I will say is my quote around connection is when 2 people know they matter at the same time.
Amazing. Jackie, thank you for being on It Starts With You. For those that are watching and listening, if you want to get in contact with Jackie, all of her details are in the show notes. Please do reach out to her and find out. The question is, do you matter? And does what I do matter? Thanks for listening. Well, that's today's dose of truth. Now go make it happen, because behaviour drives behaviour, and behaviour starts with you.